Welcome everyone, this is Andre's Restart, and today we are talking about an update on this theory for Nintendo Switch 2 being teased before the end of the year to come out sometime next year. There's definitely been a lot of debate about this, if it's possible, if Nintendo wants to impact their holiday sales, if the system's coming out sooner than later so they still need to announce it. There's a lot going on, but there's been some updates recently that add more to this conversation that I think make it very interesting. So that's what we're talking about today. But before going forward, let me point out that we are still aiming to reach 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So if you do enjoy my content, please subscribe and hit that notification bell. With your help, it just might be possible. Now for those that are unfamiliar with the theory, I encourage you to watch the previous videos on it, but I'll summarize here real quick. Basically, there are a number of Nintendo Amiibos that are set to be restocked in November at the same time. Mario Amiibos, Zelda Amiibos, Smash Bros. Amiibos, and Metroid Amiibos. This is an unprecedented amount of Amiibos to be restocked at the same time. And typically when Amiibos get restocked, they coincide relatively close to some sort of Nintendo event or announcement. For example, there were Amiibos getting restocked, and we got a Nintendo Direct, and also Sora Amiibo getting announced for Smash Bros. Ultimate. But with all the major expected Nintendo Directs having already happened for the year, many are unsure what sort of event could be coinciding with this series of different Amiibos getting restocked in November. Especially because typically the Amiibo Restocks would be somewhat related to what the event is. So what kind of event could include Smash Bros., Metroid, Mario, and Zelda? Well, a lot are thinking a Switch 2 teaser. A Switch 2 teaser showcasing perhaps an enhanced version of Tears of the Kingdom, or some sort of other Zelda game, a new Mario game, Metroid Prime 4, and perhaps a big update on Smash Bros. For the new system. But there are other possibilities. I've recently thought of a few. So for example, what if Nintendo wants to give us an update on the Nintendo Museum that they showcased somewhat during the Direct? Maybe they have a trailer that can actually showcase a little bit more details and information? If that's the case, and we get something like that, maybe the Amiibo Restocks coincide with that, and that museum trailer is showcasing things about Mario, Zelda, Metroid, you know, these historic franchises that have been around since the Nintendo Entertainment System, and then also throw in Smash Brothers. I think that's possible. But another crazy consideration is that we will be getting the release for Mario Kart Wave 6 relatively soon. November might be the time it comes out, if not late October. Perhaps the Amiibo Restocks are tied to the end of Mario Kart. And maybe there are some other surprise announcements that will be in Mario Kart. Some are speculating that we could be getting more characters in the 4 that they just announced for Wave 6. Because we were only expecting 2. By them adding 2 more, that perhaps suggests that they may be opening up the rows or columns for even more character spaces, and the Booster Course Pass has been known to surprise us with announcements coming to the game. So maybe they're adding other characters that are from other Nintendo franchises like Zelda and Metroid into Mario Kart, and that's why they're doing the Amiibo Restocks. That is another possibility. And it could just be the case that if this is the final last holiday season where Switch is the main system on the market, Nintendo may be doing things a bit differently to really push it before they announce the next system sometime next year. So that may be why the bundles are coming out a little bit earlier than usual. That may be why Nintendo's scheduling a few more Nintendo Lives. And that may be why Nintendo is doing all these Amiibo restocks all around the same time for different franchises, because they're trying to push out as much as they can for this last big holiday of Nintendo Switch where it's the primary system. I think these are all possibilities. And to be frank, I think the one I just suggested is the most likely one. However, there are still some new things that have come up that are making me consider even more that the Switch 2 teaser could happen this year. So a couple days ago, details came out on the story for Far Cry 7. And on Twitter, Necrofelipe from Universal Nintendo, who have now proven themselves to be very reliable, I would say, in terms of getting inside information and knowing what's going on, responded to this tweet and said, "This game will launch day 1 on next Switch system." And Alavon responds, I assume you mean we'll have a version for Switch 2 at its launch, rather than being a day one system launch title. And then Necrofelipe clarifies, yeah, we'll launch day one along with other console versions on Switch next generation. So basically the big news here is that when Far Cry 7 does come out, it will release on Switch 2 as the same day as other platforms. Of course, that game is expected in 2025. So how is this related to a Switch 2 teaser in holiday 2023? Well, continuing on with the thread, Yerif responds, like the possible next-gen Monster Hunter or Monster Hunter 6? And Necrofelipe responds, yup. And obviously, this isn't like a big detailed response, and there is room for interpretation here. But it seems like the implication is that Monster Hunter, the next generation of Monster Hunter, will also be a day-and-date title for Switch 2 and other platforms. And this is where things get very interesting, because we've heard that Capcom is planning a major release that's going to sell millions that's supposed to come out by the end of March of 2024 to close out the fiscal year. And typically, we see major new Monster Hunter titles come out before the end of the fiscal year. Monster Hunter Rise came out March of 2021, and it was first officially announced in September of 2020. Monster Hunter World came out January 2018, but was announced June 2017. So as you can see from the last couple major Monster Hunter releases, they tend to have about a half-year window between announcement and release. However, Tokyo Game Show just happened, where it was expected that Capcom would showcase Monster Hunter, the next generation of it, and they didn't, even though there was talk of the Monster Hunter anniversary. So there's a few considerations here. The next generation of Monster Hunter is not the game that's coming out by the end of March of 2024 that's expected to sell millions. Or two, they're for some reason holding off on showcasing this new Monster Hunter game for some sort of event to happen later this year. So some are thinking that the next generation of Monster Hunter is going to come out at the same time for all platforms, including Switch 2, and it's going to be announced before the end of the year, possibly in a Switch 2 teaser event. So Capcom's going to allow the big Nintendo event that announces the system to also be when this game is finally shown off for the first time to the public. And this will all be part of a big launch this March. As someone who is a huge Nintendo fan who's been talking about this next generation system for some time, and who's also a very big Monster Hunter fan, this is an exciting possibility. And it is a bit of an odd situation. And I will point out that we still have that Pokemon leak from early this year that has yet to have been deconfirmed about Wave 2 getting a graphics patch for the next generation system, which is supposed to come out this winter, which in theory could line up with an early March release. Even Nikki at NWPlayer123, who is known to have inside information, hasn't completely outruled this possibility. This conversation was in reference to the recently reported Breath of the Wild tech demo for Switch 2, but Watertune said, Tears of the Kingdom does many things to squeeze the file size down, presumably to increase I/O throughput. Curious if any of that would be backported. Nikki responds, if they're making the effort to patch for next gen like that Pokemon rumor, then probably. So that's still a rumor, it's unconfirmed, but the point is that someone like Nikki, who has inside information, who has heard that Switch 2 could be announced this year, still thinks it's also a possibility. On top of this Monster Hunter stuff, on top of this Amiibo Restock stuff, it does get me wondering if this can happen. But I gotta tell you, I'm still doubtful. While I do believe, based on what we've heard, that Switch 2 could run the next generation of Monster Hunter, and I do love the idea of it being a day-and-date title, and I think it could happen, I just feel like the timing might not work out here. Would Capcom really save the announcement of the next generation of Monster Hunter for a Switch 2 teaser event in November, even though it's releasing on other platforms, and just totally skip Tokyo Game Show where they were talking about the anniversary? I'm a bit skeptical. It's possible it's being saved for a big Game Awards announcement, but I'm just unsure of the next Monster Hunter making it out by the end of March of 2024 if it hasn't been announced yet. Never mind it coming out on Switch 2, which would also have to come out in March, And this would also have to line up with them having some sort of big Nintendo title launching with the Switch 2, I would assume. And then this would also have to be in the same month where Nintendo already has Princess Peach Showtime, which is releasing March 22, 2024. Now, I will say that we have seen Nintendo do something like this before. Back in 2017, when the Nintendo Switch launched with Breath of the Wild in the beginning of March, Nintendo still was publishing games for Nintendo 3DS. Mario Sports Superstars came out at different points in March depending on the region, so maybe the way Nintendo looked at Mario Sports Superstars back then is how Nintendo's looking at Princess Peach Showtime now. So perhaps they envisioned another early March release a few weeks before Princess Peach Showtime, and they're putting out a brand new system, and Monster Hunter is going to be made available during this month. But I would also think they would have to have some sort of Nintendo published launch title, as they always do. But I doubt it would be 3D Mario, which has been suggested would be the launch title for this system. The reason I would doubt that is because we're getting Mario Wonder in October, Mario RPG in November, Mario vs. Donkey Kong in February, and Princess Peach Showtime in March. Would Nintendo really put a brand new, big, open, exciting 3D Mario also in March? Also right next to Monster Hunter that always sells really well on big Nintendo systems, especially if Capcom wants to showcase Monster Hunter as a big Switch 2 title. All of that at the same time just doesn't seem likely to me. So while I do think it is possible, I just don't think it's happening that soon. That said, I love the idea of Monster Hunter being available day and date on Switch 2 in the first year of the system sometime in 2024. And I do think there's plenty of room for optimism that the Switch 2 can come out earlier in the year than later. With all these different games that we keep hearing about coming to Switch 2, I think it makes more and more sense for Switch 2 to come out earlier in the year than later, so they can have months leading into the holidays where they can have a series of games coming out that people can buy and play, and buy more systems, so more people buy more systems, so there'll be even more sales going into the holidays. Like, I think they want to have a buildup of software here and hardware. One other angle I'll throw out, and this will probably be more of a dedicated video a little bit later down the road, is that maybe 3D Mario wouldn't be the launch title for Switch 2. Maybe 3D Mario is being saved for the holiday, and they have another title that's going to be the launch title. But what would that be? I think it's too soon for Mario Kart. I think it's too soon for Smash Brothers. I think it's too soon for Zelda unless they have some sort of crazy remake planned day one, which would be mind-blowing, but would also explain why there's no DLC coming. But what if it's Metroid Prime 4? Could I see a scenario where Metroid Prime 4 comes out early March and they still have Princess Peach Showtime in late March for Switch? Yeah, I do think something like that could happen. But also accounting for Monster Hunter, and also making the assumption Nintendo would be comfortable with Metroid Prime 4 being the launch title, and also assuming that Nintendo's going to have this really quick marketing cycle for Metroid Prime 4 when it itself hasn't even been shown off to the public yet. Still very skeptical of that possibility, although I do think Prime 4 might be a launch title for Switch 2, but we'll talk more about that in a few days. But what do you guys make of this situation? How do you think Monster Hunter ties into Switch 2, if at all? Let me know in the comments below. This is Andres Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.